announcements. First of all, I'd like all the commissioners to introduce themselves and tell why you're on this commission. We'll start with Deborah. Stephen looked kind of stunned.
My name is Deborah Doyle.
Push up. I think you have to push the button to make it green.
Is it green?
Yeah, there you go.
On?
It's green. There you go.
Whoa. All right. My name is Deborah Doyle. I just joined the commission. I have some experience with library matters. I've been I live in Windsor, and I represent the Sonoma County on the commission. And do you want to know who I am? Do you want to know what I've done? I've been the president of the California Library Association. I just finished serving on the United for Libraries Board, which is the division of American Library Association that involves friends, foundations, commissioners, et cetera, et cetera. Thanks.
I'm Barbara McKenzie. I represent Rohnert Park on the Library Commission. I had a long career in the medical world, and then once I retired, I started working a lot for the libraries. I was on the Friends of the Library Board and the Library Advisory Board, and I maintain those connections. I love libraries, and we had a Carnegie in my little town in Frankfort, Indiana, and we loved it. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Andy Elkind. I am really happy to be here as the new representative from Healdsburg. My wife and I have been living in this area part-time for the last 3.5 years, but we love it so much that we sold our house in the city and moved up here full-time. I was looking to get involved and to find a way to make a contribution, and when I saw this position open, I jumped at it. I have a lot of strong feelings about libraries, mostly, I think, due to my mom, and she's in my mind today because if she were alive, she passed away 16 years ago. Today would have been her 91st birthday. She loved libraries, and I remember every summer going to the bookmobile to get books, and helped instill in me a lifetime love of libraries. I was fortunate to experience some great libraries during the course of my education, and really looking forward to doing whatever I can to make this library an even greater and more important part of the Sonoma community. So thank you very much.
My name's Tom Hauser. I'm the Sonoma representative. I'm here because one day I walked into our branch and a friend who's a retired ex-commissioner said I had to apply for the job.
My name's Paul Heavenridge. I represent the Petaluma Library and Petalumans in general. And let's say I've been on the commission for 6 years now. And I've always been involved with libraries. Starting out when I was 7, I started going to our local little elementary library. And I think it was a great librarian. I think that's where it starts, a great kid librarian. So I've been involved with libraries, the California Library, nationally for under the Department of Education, being involved with libraries. We do a lot of tutor training programs and a lot of curriculum for the libraries. So I love the libraries, and I'm just honored to be here.
Good morning, I'm Stephen Zolman. I have the proud distinction of representing all the folk over in Sebastopol. I'm a former San Francisco public defender. I represented our youth for 8.5 years and our adults for 4. So my passion is to make sure that our libraries remain a safe space for all, including our most marginalized in our community, which means those with or without papers, those of different races, ethnicities, sexual orientation, gender identity, etc. Because I've seen it firsthand when our youth do not have safe spaces like the library, and how not such great things can happen to them. Thanks.
And finally, I'm Reese Foxon. I want to give back to the community. The community over the years has supported me and given me a lot, sometimes when I've been in desperate need and sometimes when less in need, but I need to give back to the community. It's very important to me. So that's why I am a commissioner. It's my way of giving back. Anyway, okay, are there any announcements that anybody wants to make? Okay, yeah?
Is that for the general public?
That's for you.
Is that for me? Would this be an appropriate time?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to everyone to note that there will be a.
Could you please use your microphone?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so there you go. I can start over that way. I wanted everyone to know there is an exhibit on the Carnegie libraries coming up here starting October 6th at the Petaluma Library and Museum. And it includes all our existing and former Carnegie libraries in Sonoma. So some of them have been torn down, as you know, and some of them are repurposed for other reasons. But it's going to be a really great history of these libraries, starting from the 1900s, and what it took the community to get them. Carnegie did not give all the money to do this. The community had to come in with half of the money. And a lot of the existing groups run by women to improve the community came up with that money, and it's a great story. Anyway, that's coming up, and I have a few of these newsletters if anybody's interested. I can pass around. But the opening reception is a celebration of honoring Lucy Cordham and her role in preserving California Carnegie libraries. Some of you may know Lucy Cordham as an historian and also preserving our land here in Sonoma. But she did her master thesis on Carnegie libraries in California and helped preserve quite a few of them, getting them on the historical record, not the historical record, making them historical preservation entities. So it's coming up. It'll be a great exhibit, and I encourage everybody to go since we all love libraries, right?
Thank you, Paul. Ours still stands, our library, Carnegie Library. It's now Wine at the Library. It's a wine tasting room. So anyway, kind of fun. Okay, any public appearances?
I just wanted to make sure that we announced the new staff. Susan, were you going to do that before she moved on?
I'm going to do that in my report, and then Vicki's going to introduce her new staff member, but I can certainly do it now.
Okay. It was
okay. Is it in there? Okay. Oh, sorry. Commissioner Chair Foxen, do we have a chance to introduce new folks? Is that okay?
Sure. That would be great. We introduced ourselves.
Right. Well, I'm glad to welcome two members of the staff, and we also have another member as well that we'll mention, but I'd like to introduce Lana Adlawan and Morgan Rose Persing. And Lana's right here sitting at the table. Thanks for stepping up there, Lana. She joined us on August 20th, and she most recently was the acting associate director for Oakland Public Library and formerly for several years the supervising librarian for teen services. She's worked in urban libraries on the East and West Coast and loves working with young people, also worked at Sacramento Public Library. So we're really excited to have Lana join us as a division, public services division manager, and she and Sarah Van Trees are managing all the facilities here. And also I'd like to introduce Morgan Rose Persing. Morgan, we're very excited to have her with us as well. She joined us on August 20th. And she's also worked all around the state, the County of Los Angeles Public Libraries, the Santa Clara City Library, and she is very focused on serving folks of all ages, but really focused on adult services, working with adults in all types of libraries and all ways where they are in their life. And she is our adult services administrator, and she's going to be working closely with Kathy Deweese, who is our youth services administrator. So with the addition of Lana and Morgan, we have a really strong strong public services team, which I think, working with all our librarians and other staff, can really move us forward. And I have to say that in discussing our director position here with several folks, people are very excited about our new hires, and they know about our new hires. So that's really, I think that will help us in our recruitment. And I know Vicki wanted to introduce one of her new employees.
So I'd like to introduce Bridget Hayes. Bridget is our new digital literacy specialist, and Bridget is going to be working in the initial stages of her time at Sonoma County Library with digital audio and video resources, part of which are being funded by the city of Santa Rosa itself to bring some knowledge about audio and digital video to our patrons and customers of the Sonoma County Libraries. So welcome, Bridget.
Okay, well, I welcome everybody, new commissioners, new staff. I think it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to working with everybody and moving this whole library forward. I think we have a good foundation to move from now. And thank you, Suzanne, for bringing it to my attention. Okay, public appearances. None? All righty. Lab appointments. We have some appointments, and the tradition is, we'll start with Sebastopol, is you read the draft motion that says, I move by resolution, and we will approve it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move by resolution that the Sonoma County Library Commission appoint the following applicant to the terms as listed.
I hear a second?
Second.
I hear many seconds. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposing? All righty. Okay, the next one is for Santa Rosa, and there is nobody here for that one. Santa Rosa hopefully will appoint their commissioners on the 25th of this month. So I will read it. I move by resolution that the Sonoma County Library Commission appoint the following applicant to the terms as listed. Christine Belt to a youth member position on the Santa Rosa Library Advisory Board for a term ending on June 30th, 2020.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Righty, move along. This one's for Cloverdale, so I will read that one. I move by resolution that the Sonoma County Library Commission appoint the following applicant to the terms as listed. Miguel Gonzalez to a youth position on the Cloverdale Library Advisory Board for a term ending on June 30th, 2020. Do I hear?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and opposed? All righty. So we have 3 new lab members, 2 young people. That's exciting. Okay, moving right along. It's time to go into the closed session. We'll go upstairs into the council chamber up there, and we will see you back here when we are done. I guess that's it. All righty, and we are back. There is no reportable information from the closed session, so thank you for being patient while we were away. So we're back into open session. Is there anybody from a library advisory board or the Foundation of Friends that wants to make any comments today? Okay, don't see anybody. So we're down to commission reports. It was kind of a crazy month, and I noticed Barbara was the only one that submitted hers. I know mine are very nicely sitting at home on my computer. So if everybody'd go down and give a report of their activities over the last month. I know some of you are just trying to get up and running, but just tell how you've done that and what you've experienced, who you've seen, maybe give a little bit of information. Okay.
Sure, thank you. I attended a wonderful master gardening session put on in conjunction with UC Davis at the Sebastopol Library. Wonderful, because it definitely engages our older set of our population, and then also it is very mindful of interacting with the youth as well to make sure that they understand the connection between growing and nutrition and building that connection there. Also, the Sonoma County, the wine country, the library set aside some time for us that were interested in becoming tutorers for children in preschool all the way up to age 3 to make sure that enough tutorers are present. Because I learned an interesting phrase in the process of children learn to read until age 3, and then after the age of 3, they are encouraged to just read to learn. So if you don't know how to read and you're already beyond the age of third grade, no one's slowing down for you. So that was a very good refresher. Thank you.
The Petaluma lab meeting will be October 24th, so I will not, I haven't attended one yet. Well, I did attend one, but our former commissioner, Tim May, was still the commissioner, so I was just a visitor. But I did attend at the Petaluma Library the Petaluma Author Expo, which is a lot of local authors. That was a meet and greet, and they talked about their books, and the aforementioned Tim May had his book there of photography, and it was well attended, and I enjoyed it. It was Saturday, 2 Saturdays ago. So there's the other thing I know we are starting to talk about, and we'll talk about in the lab, is the Petaluma Refresh, which is a big topic of conversation, and that's coming up. So I'll have further information to report next commission meeting.
No report.
As a new commissioner, I'm just getting started, and it was still kind of vacation time for a lot of folks that I would have met with, but I did have a chance to go to the Healdsburg Library, and I met with John Haupt, who is the branch manager, and we had a great discussion. I was very impressed with John and with the very welcoming and friendly environment he's created at the library. The next day, there was a meeting of the Library Advisory Board, which I was able to attend, and that was helpful to understand or start to understand the kinds of activities that they get involved in. And I also met Sarah there. And met Sean McCaffrey from the City Council, who invited me to come this evening and meet the folks on the Healdsburg City Council. So I'm going to go to the 6 o'clock meeting and introduce myself. Then last week, I went down to the library headquarters, where I had a chance to, of course, meet Jane, who I'd been corresponding with, and Jaylene I'd been corresponding with, and had a lovely conversation with Susan, who threw me into the deep end but exposed me to just a small part of her incredibly in-depth knowledge about the library and the system. And in addition to that, I've been spending many pleasurable hours reading through the new commissioner handbook and the accompanying documents. Thank you.
Yes, I did submit mine in writing. I probably went a little crazy on the photos, but I do like to publicize events. I am active on Facebook, and I do share things a lot of times when I'm down there at the library and try to get more people to come down. I think that I tried to show here the incredible variety of opportunities that we have to serve as commissioners by attending events. I went to the Santa Rosa Symphony down there, the Moonlighters event. Lisa and I went to the Mayors and Council Members Association, which was very important to get our faces in front of as many mayors and council members throughout the county as we did. We didn't really particularly have prepared remarks. We were just saying, hi, how are you? We're here. We're the new leadership, and we hope to do a more in-depth presentation at another meeting. With Susan will do that, I'm sure. Anyway, it's an important group since that's who we represent. The thing I'd like to say about the Library Advisory Board, which I attended, I have talked about this for at least 4 years. I think it's very unclear what library advisory boards are supposed to be doing. I know we tried to take this on as a topic in the last commission, but we didn't get very far. I know there's plans to do an all lab day, but beyond that, the fact that all the labs meet at different times, they have different bylaws, it's a lack of clarity of what labs are supposed to do. And I think you can tell we had none of our lab members actually show up at our last meeting except the chair. We had a great meeting, but it's indicative of the lack of clarity about what labs are supposed to be doing. And I do want to keep that on our maybe semi-back burner, but as an important topic as we go forward. So anyway, it's always an honor to represent the library, and we do have a lot of opportunities to do that. So thank you.
I attended the Guerneville Library Advisory Board meeting, and we talked about bylaw changes. And I assume that since I've been appointed by Sonoma County, that gives me permission to go to all of the meetings that I can go to. So I plan to do that and try to introduce myself to as many as I can. But other than that, I don't have much else to report.
Okay, thank you. I had time to meet with Stephen and with Andy, and it were very enjoyable conversations. Got to know him a little bit and got a good feel for him. Deborah, I have known since Measure Y was on, and we put signs together one day for all day, and it was fun. And I've been talking with her off and on. We went to a radio station and did a plug for the Measure Y during that time. So yeah, we've known each other for a while, but it was good to get to know Stephen and Andy. I've attended advocacy and finance meetings, et cetera, and met with Barbara several times alone, and then with Barbara and Susan. I've been doing meetings, is what I've been doing. Went to the lab, and I agree with the fact that the labs really are kind of stymied at this point in time. We need to figure out a pathway for them. I have made arrangements with the people from Santa Rosa who have volunteered to begin the organization of an all-lab day. And the first meeting, I believe, is October 3rd in the evening at Central Library. I have to verify that, but they're all enthused. And so we're going to get together and begin the foundation. Somebody, and I can't remember who from the commission, has volunteered to go also. Gosh, I can't remember. Anyway, so we're getting that on the way. And from the survey information, the survey that I sent out asking what their issues are and what they would like to see being done, et cetera, I hope to build something from that and hope to give them some solid foundation to work from so that they can build something and we can get them more functional and more integrated into the process. Also went to the mayor's and council meeting, as Barbara said, and my big thing was, as she said, putting a face. You know, we are library, we're here. We're going to be going to the next one, which is the second Thursday in October. And that night, I basically just said thank you for setting up the system that we have in Sonoma County for the libraries and supporting that system. I wanted to have them know that we appreciate what they do and we appreciate, you know, what they give us to make it possible. And finally, I went to the Sonoma Valley Lab. They were going to have a discussion on the letter that their lab wrote to us regarding the use of Measure Y funds. Unfortunately, there was not a quorum, and so nothing was discussed. So it was a very quick meeting, and I got to go home before the traffic got too bad. And yeah, and I got to go to vacation to Hawaii, but that's a whole separate thing. Okay, now we're going to be talking about and giving reports on the various committees and ad hoc committees. What I would like the chairs of each of these committees to do is to just give a brief description of what your committee does. I've passed out a sheet that I hope everybody will fill out on the commission, and giving their preferences as to which committee they'd like to become involved in, et cetera, et cetera. So, starting with the director's evaluation. Now, nobody on this commission that I know of has ever been, oh, hi, Randall. Okay. Nobody on this commission has ever been on a director's evaluation committee. However, basically what it does is they evaluate the performance of the library director. And at times it's been done monthly, at times it's been done quarterly. I'm not sure if it's ever been done biannually, but at least quarterly. And it's just to find out where they are, where we are with them, and to do a performance evaluation just to make sure that things are on track and online and everything is going well. So that's what the director's evaluation. Barbara, I'll let you talk about Finance Committee.
Okay. I've been the chair of the Finance Committee for the last 4 years. We've kind of slowly added to our clarity, I'd say, about our role. In particular, it's to preview the budget and monitor the budget and to be involved in the audit as it comes through the audit process. We get great reports from Ken. He's been, obviously our, as CFO, the leader in our financial knowledge and in all the reports and the explanations of how the money flows through the system. We have been involved in setting up an OPEB ad hoc committee, and I was the liaison to that. This committee was made up of outside people, and they were very effective. We had 3 or 4 very focused meetings and came out with a policy recommendation, which the commission adopted. So we're in very much clearer waters on our OPEB. We also have looked for and received a CalPERS expert consultant to look at our CalPERS issues. So I believe this afternoon we have a finance committee at 3:30 at the library conference room, which is an odd place and an odd time now. But
Barbara, it's at 3 p.m., the finance committee.
Well, we changed it to 3:30. Did somebody change it back?
I thought it was 3 too.
Okay, it'll be at 3.
Good to know.
No, my notes said 3:30, and I know I put in my report 3 o'clock, so it's confusion, but we'll do it 3. That's our standard time. So we meet the third Monday in headquarters at 3 o'clock. Today we're at Central Library. Normally we're at headquarters. And anyway, one of the items on our agenda today is reviewing the roles and responsibilities of this committee, which is something I drafted when I first got on here just to add some clarification, and we've modified it a few times. So if we adopt some of the changes that I'm suggesting this afternoon, it'll bring back the full-blown roles and responsibilities to the commission at our next meeting. But anyway, it's a very interesting, demanding, and a very important committee, and I appreciate everybody who served on it and appreciate Ken for his leadership and guidance.
Okay, and I've been chair of the advocacy committee for 3 years. Tim May was the first year. And we have worked on a number of things. We worked on the resolution for the undocumented immigrants. And for us, it was an important statement, very loud, very clear statement that undocumented immigrants were safe and welcome in the libraries. And I think all of us on the committee felt like it was a statement that needed to be made given the tenor of the atmosphere today. We've gone to Sacramento in support of an amendment to a Senate bill for getting the voting. Right now, if you want to pass a measure like Measure Y, it's 66 2/3% that you have to have, and we were attempting to get it lower to the 55% that the schools have for their bonds and for their kinds of things that they want to do in capital improvements. So it got stalled with the change of the balance in the committee. Everybody was voting by party. And when one Democrat in the Senate got in problems, they put it on hold. So that's where it's sitting, as I understand at this point in time. It's sitting on hold. But Senator Dodd was the author of it, and McGuire was one of the sponsors of it. Both of them are from Sonoma County or represent at least a portion of Sonoma County. So it was really interesting to watch and to see. 3 of us went for that. So we've done things like that. We've created slideshows that the commissioners can use for different presentations before their city councils. Some of them have been rather in-depth. One of them was less so. Yeah, so those are some of the things that the advocacy committee has done. I was chair of Revenue Enhancement Committee, which is not on your list because at this point in time, the Revenue Enhancement Committee is on hiatus. Back when Measure M failed, they created the Revenue Enhancement Committee to support a new measure, which became Measure Y. And we worked for the 2 years between from 2014 to 2016, and that was the committee that was doing the work, along with what was known as a Directors Committee, which kind of took it out from under some of the Brown Act issues so that the library could get some advocacy work, some outreach, some understanding of what they needed to do to get a measure passed. And obviously it was successful because we did get it passed, thank heavens. So the Revenue Enhancement Committee is on there, not so much because anybody needs to join it at this point in time, but I want to put it in all of your heads at this point in time. I more than likely will be gone when this needs to be revived because I will be way too old. 2024, it needs to come back to life again because 2026, the Measure Y sunsets. So you're going to have to start a long lead time before to do the groundwork. Now, the Advocacy Committee is going to be laying some of that foundation as we go, building up to 2024. But in 2024, I hope somebody in this room is alive enough and has a long enough memory that they can pull this out of their hat and put it into effect. Okay? So you don't have to choose if you want to be on that committee. Okay, so those are the committees, and I would like to have your first, what you would like to serve, the standing committees, what committee you'd like to serve on. And that's why I passed these out, because I want it in writing so I don't forget it. People have told me, and I'm thinking, oh, well, this person wants to be there, and et cetera. Anyway, so ad hoc committees. There are 6 of them at this point in time. The SOP, or the Standard Operating Procedures Committee, we put some stuff together, we handed it out, we got some feedback. I set it aside for a little bit, then I began putting it all together. And then I realized what was happening was there were some things that were just information that you needed about the committee and some things that were the actual procedures. So I began separating everything back out again, and that's the process I've been in, and I got stuck for a while, and I set it aside because I couldn't even think about it, and now I'm trying to put it back together. I'd hoped to have it done this month, but it didn't work. Vacation was much more important. Standard operating procedures are the actual processes by which we do things, and that's what we're putting together. Hopefully in the next month or so, I'll have a copy for all of you, at least as far as I've gone, and you can take it over and then tear it apart. I don't care what you do with it. Director's Search Committee we are in the process, as you know, searching for a new library director. We have very, very fortunately happened on Susan Hildreth here, and I just am so grateful for her being here, helping us with this process. Not only does she know people, but she knows what we need to look for, and she's helping us find that, and she's helping us resolve some of the issues that we've had up to this point. And I'm really excited about that process, but it's looking for and searching for the new director. Foundation Commission. This is not the liaison. This is the ad hoc committee that was established by Helena to try and rebuild the relationships between the library and the foundation. In 2016, the foundation, and I have never gotten a definitive answer as to why, but they revised their bylaws and stated that instead of solely supporting the library, they were going to support literacy in general. Now, what foundations do, there are a number of opinions. They basically raise money, but it's how much money and what the focus is with that money. It's my understanding that most foundations raise large amounts of money to help with, in particular, capital improvements, but a lot of other things, but in particular, capital improvements. And we need to continue this committee, and more than likely the foundation liaison will be part of that. But we need to decide how we want to move forward with the foundation. And they are using Sonoma County Public Library Foundation as their name. They changed their focus, but they did not change the name. So there's a number of issues that need to be resolved. Okay, the next one, the JPA and Commission Bylaws Review Committee. Tom, do you want to give a 2 cents?
Yes, this, for you new folks, you need to read the Joint Powers Agreement because it has a lot of things that it says that we're supposed to do. And this committee is studying that and what our bylaws actually say. And we're going to try and bring them in conformance. And I'm looking for one person. We have two, and I want one more body, and we're ready to kind of go ahead and get that moving. There's another aspect which was there too, is we were studying the leases, because one of the things the JPA says is we should have a standard lease agreement with all of our cities, and we don't even have leases with some of them. So there are two aspects, the JPA bylaws and the leases as part of the JPA follow through.
Okay, and I want to compliment you on your lease analysis. Yes, thank you. Yeah, it was
my analysis of the JPA and the bylaws.
I haven't seen that yet. Wow, okay. Look forward to it.
I'm ready to go. Give me a hot body.
Yeah, I will. That's what Barbara and I are going to do this afternoon after we meet with Susan, before we meet with the Finance Committee. Okay, Commissioner Orientation and Training, it's something that came up. Tim May was going to head it, and he was going to be on the committee, but has since moved away. He'd rather go travel, and I don't blame him. So Barbara and I believe Tom and I had been talking about it, but anybody else that wants to join us, We would like to create a training and an orientation for commissioners so that you don't happen in like you have all have happened in this time. I mean, nobody's really had any official training or anything. We're looking at assigning mentors, so you have somebody to talk to. This person I can call up. At this point in time, any of you who want to call me, I would be more than happy to answer your questions or what have you. And I'm sure Barbara feels the same way. And yeah, so that's what commissioner orientation and training is. And it might be good to have some people on who just come on, because it'd be nice to know what they would like and what we missed. I mean, our training was digging in and then spending the next 12 to 18 months trying to figure out what we're doing. And I would rather not have it go so long for everybody else. And the all-day lab committee I mentioned earlier, that's just forming, and it's just specifically to create an all-day lab, probably in the winter or spring. Liaisons. There's one liaison, one official liaison, and I stuck another one down here. But the first one is the foundation liaison. And as you know, the foundation is basically a money raiser and a supporter of the library. And the relationships are very difficult at this point in time. But we're hoping, and we're gradually beginning to talk and rebuild it. So we need somebody who will go to their meetings. I believe it's once a month on a Wednesday evening here in Santa Rosa. Then there's a
Reese, just a point that I also try to attend those meetings.
Yes.
Or if I'm not there, usually our division managers, so the library has a presence at the meetings.
Yeah. But I think the commission needs to be involved too, so.
Yeah.
And then there's a foundation that has been developed for the Roseland Library. Up to this point in time, Linda Garcia, who was a commissioner, was going to that and was supporting that and bringing information back when Roseland people had a meeting. And I would like to find somebody who would like to do that. Okay, good. And I will have to find out when the meeting days are and what's actually going on, et cetera, but I have some keys and I'll figure it out for you. Okay, so just put your preferences down sometime during the meeting and then give them to us afterwards, because we'd like to get these committees established and moving again. Okay, where are we? Oh, yes.
Yes, I just wanted to add that there actually is also one other liaison, and that's the Measure Y Committee, and that will again be talked about this afternoon at the Finance Committee. I have been the Measure Y liaison as chair of the Finance Committee, and we're going to talk about whether that's an appropriate way to continue.
Yeah, the Measure Y Committee does come out, Measure Y liaison does come out of the Finance Committee, but okay. So be thinking about that one too. So it's a lot of places. We have 2 additional commissioners who are due to come on, hopefully within the next couple months. Okay. And
Madam Chair, can I ask a question?
Jason, yeah?
Does the SOP committee work with the bylaws committee?
No, but I was thinking about that as he said some things the other day, and yes, there's going to have to be a crossover. So as soon as I get my part done, or, yeah.
Okay.
Somebody does.
That's all,
then
thanks.
I'm going to feed it to him and let him carry it from there. But yes, I had been thinking about that, and you're right on that. Absolutely. So more work for you, Tom. Okay. Anything else? Any questions about any of the committees? Yes.
I had a question. Do I need to put on my mic? Okay. When you were talking about the foundation, the Sonoma Public Library Foundation, what is that, a private?
It's a nonprofit, 501c3.
It is?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a separate organization, yeah.
We do not control it.
No,
Right.
not at all. The liaison simply, if they have questions, feeds in, or if there's something important that they need to know, gives it to them. If it comes, there's information that needs to come back to the commission, then it comes back. The committee, the ad hoc committee, is an effort to try and rebuild the relationship between the two entities and get some communication going again.
Did they provide funding in the past? Or?
They still
have
provide funding.
Provided funding.
They have? Okay.
They decided to spend. Were you going to talk, Susan?
No, I just wanted to clarify that they do still provide funding.
Yeah, they do.
Are there other foundations that provide funding to the library?
Not to my knowledge.
Well, we may have received grants from foundations or applied for specific funding, but the Sonoma County Library Foundation is designed to support the library. They also have expanded their support for an activity, a free bookmobile that's related to literacy. They also sponsor that activity.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Moving on to the consent calendar, we have the meetings, minutes for the August 6th meeting, and authorizing an Envisionware contract expenditure.
I move adoption of the consent calendar.
Second? Do I hear a second?
Second.
All righty. Everybody in favor of adopting this consent calendar?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? All righty. Okay, we're down to the discussion items and an interim director's report.
Oh, that was fast. Okay, well, in light of time, I have a written report, which I think covers what I've been doing. I continue to work with the commission, the operations management team to move things forward. And just for the sake of our new commissioners, just to clarify that I'm very excited to be here and work with you, but I do have a limited number of hours I can contribute as a retired CalPERS employee, about 960 hours total. I'm working about 4 days a week, but with vacation and time off, I don't think it would maybe average to about 3. So I'll be available at least, up till that 960, unless we find a great new director. That's what we're really trying to do. So, and I continue to enjoy working with you, and we're really excited to have our new staff and get our recruitment launched.
All right, hi. In the packet, you'll see there's actually 2 months worth of financials. It's the year end. The first one starts on page 41. It's the June 2018 report, or the year end report. We're on a fiscal year end. It starts out with cash balances that you can see there, and put on there whether they're up or down from the previous year. The June, we're in June right now, so this is what it looks like. The audit is currently underway, so there may be some changes. There's no anticipated changes to these numbers, but if they find something, they may change a little bit. The biggest thing that we've talked about before was the property tax revenue, or the property tax budget, which is detailed further down the line, had a surplus of right around $1 million, I think. Let me look. Yeah, on page 42, actually it was $2 million, I'm sorry. $1 million of that surplus was unbudgeted revenue. The tax revenue actually came in $1 million over than what we budgeted. The rest of it was mainly both with the property tax and Measure Y, as we've talked about before, was driven by the open positions that we're working hard to fill, and we have been working hard to fill over the year. And that with the open positions, it kind of spreads out into other things like facilities projects, IT projects that weren't completed, that were budgeted for but not completed because we didn't have the manpower. It also gets into some of the events and programming that we were unable to do. You'll see that the sales tax, the middle column on page 42 shows a $4.4 million surplus with the sales tax. And as I mentioned just before, it's all the same reasons that I just mentioned. The biggest thing is that we just had, it was more difficult to ramp up for the extra revenue than we anticipated. We are currently talking things over with the Finance Committee about one-time uses of the Measure Y surplus, and we hope to finalize that with the Finance Committee today, and our hope is to have something in front of you all October 1st at the next commission meeting. So just back to page 41 real quickly, just to go over the items that are on there. We just have some categories there, just the cash balances, because that's always important. And then year-to-date revenue and expense and how it compares to the budget. The tax revenue, as you can see, the library receives basically 2 payments of property tax revenue in December and in April, and then there's a small third one that comes in at year end when they true everything up. We get the sales tax revenue monthly from the Board of Equalization, and then we also show our fund balance there. You can see it's at the end of the year it was 21.6 million. I'm sorry. And then at the bottom, we're required to report anything over $25,000 that we pay, excluding payroll and things like that. And you can see at the June, there was quite a few things there. And there's a little description on the right. So that's what the monthly financials look like. The page 42 shows just a couple columns, general categories for revenue and expense. And then as we get further down the reports, you can see that starting on page 43, there's very detailed revenue expense reports for the general fund. And then after 4 pages of that, I believe, then there's a very detailed report, the same format for the sales tax funds. So that's what they look like each month. Maybe I'll stop right here before I get into July. Just asked if there's any questions.
I have one. So with your reports each month, then you're going to alert us for anything of like a 10% deviation, and that would just be for the prior year. It doesn't go back any other prior year. We rely on you to kind of flag deviations, and up to what % do you alert us?
Yeah, if something is really out of the ordinary, I make sure I mention it during the month. We have a lot of large payments or large expense items for instance, the one you just approved, the Envisionware contract. I can't remember how much that was for, but
$56,000.
Okay, that'll get paid all in probably August, or no, where are we here? September. And it'll show up in September, but it's for the whole month. So things like that, we can explain really quickly. And it's not that we're going to be over budget. We're over budget that current month, but as the year goes, it all evens out. But if there's anything extraordinary, yes, I'll bring it up each month.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
There it is. You might also remind them that there is a period in time where everything seems like we don't have the money,
Right.
because of the way the property taxes come to us.
Yeah, that's a great segue into the July report.
Okay.
So, thank you. The July report starts on page 49. And what you'll begin to see here, especially with the property tax side of things, is the cash will be dropping every month that we talk until we get that first payment in December. And as you can see, the first line there, the general fund cash balance went down to 10.5 million, and it was 12.6 million. So it dropped 2.1 million in the 1 month, and that's normal, and it'll continue to drop like that until December. The sales tax cash balance is pretty even, just because we get the sales tax revenue each month. So as Commissioner Foxen pointed out, the beginning of the year can tend to look, it can look bad with some, the expenses over the revenue, but it's really just the way we receive the property tax revenue. That's why it looks so bad at the beginning, and it'll even out throughout the year. And it also affects the fund balance as we go through the year. Cash and fund balance aren't exactly a one-to-one, but they're fairly close. As you'll see down there, the fund balance went down $600,000, and the unassigned fund balance, it was only $3.4 million of the total. And that will continue that drop will continue as we go through the first part of the year also. Other than that, on page 50, is that page 50? Yeah. You can see the two columns, the general fund and the sales tax fund, and, there'll be zeros in the revenue, especially under the general fund for quite some time, and it does look odd, and this just points out how odd it looks. In 1 year it shows, or in 1 month it shows a deficit of $1.2 million. And then the detail follows that for the month of July. It was a fairly normal month of July, nothing really out of the ordinary. And that brings up any other questions that you may have about these.
Ken, apologize for my naivete. What is an unassigned fund balance?
It's a good question. I can definitely bring a spreadsheet that shows that at the October 1st meeting. But basically, the unassigned, there's a committed fund balance. The commission can commit fund balance to certain things, and there's a certain part of it that's in the fund balance policy that's what's it called? There's a name, the stabilization fund. So that's 15% of our operating budget. So that's committed to the stabilization fund, like when the economy drops and things like that. There's a whole lot of our fund balance that is from donations from the friends or from people that have left us stuff through their wills or anything like that. And that's usually assigned, that's what called assigned fund balance, to specific branches. And sometimes even within those branches, specific things in the branches. So those are items that are assigned, and then basically the remainder is the unassigned fund balance, and can be used for, it can be used for just about anything that the commission wants to use it for. The important thing with the fund balance is it's not really good to use it as to cover operating costs. It's like it's like our own budgets. We have a savings account, and if we have to dip into the savings account every month to pay our rent or our mortgage, savings account's not going to last long. So that's why it's usually for one-time big items that we talk about using them for.
Thank you.
Ken, we might mention that we did just change our fund balance policy to require our goal of 15%,
right,
which is up from 12.5%. So
right.
We should probably distribute our fund balance policy to all the new commissioners.
Yeah, there was a couple of significant things recently. Not only the fund balance policy upping it from 12.5% to 15%, but the OPEB policy was also recently adopted. I think both of those were in August, and it assigned $3 million out of the unassigned fund balance to the OPEB trust, which we will be depositing in 4 different deposits over the next 2 years. And that's to cover. This is getting into another thing that needs a lot of explanation. The other post-employment benefits are retiree health care liability that we have sitting out there. So,
Anybody else? Question? Statements? Okay. Thank you, Ken. Okay, moving on to 10.3, and I believe this is Jamie, and it relates to our leased books.
Okay, my name is Jamie Anderson, Collection Services Division Manager. We are celebrating this month 1 year of having leased books in our libraries. So this is a 1-year report on how that's been going. So we started last September of 2017. Basically, the program is a subscription service. So rather than purchasing the books outright, we have a subscription service where we can choose the titles we want, the quantities we want. They're provided to us, and then they can be returned to the vendor when the popularity has diminished. So we can purchase any type of books as a lease book, but what we've chosen to purchase are mainly adult bestsellers. I brought a couple of examples with me today. We're buying fiction, nonfiction, and large type books, such as these. They look like any other book. They just have this additional red sticker on the top of the spine. If you notice those in your libraries, that indicates that it's a leased copy. As an example, this title, which came out, I think, about 6 months or so ago, was extremely popular. We had a huge number of holds on the wait list for it. We purchased about 100 copies. 2/3 of those were leased copies, and we've already returned about 1/3 of those copies back to the vendor now that the demand has diminished. As far as the size of the collection, right now, in the first year, we've ordered around 4,300 copies as lease books. We've returned just a small amount of that, about 781 items, because the first year has focused on building up our collection. And as we move into the second year, we'll probably be returning more and rotating the collection through more. I did want to talk a little bit about cost. The average cost of each lease book, again, the adult books we've been buying, is $16.79 per copy. So with this program, our goal was never to save money. Our goal was to have the titles that the public wants the most when they want it without a long wait, and then to be able to quickly get them off our shelves when that demand diminishes. So we're paying for these books about what we would be paying if we were to buy them outright. There's really no significant difference in the cost. It's no more economical to buy them than it is to lease them. when we passed Measure Y and our materials budget increased by 67%, we were very interested in looking at a lease book program like this for all of the reasons that I mentioned. Thanks to Measure Y, we've been able to put more copies in the hands of the public faster. The circulation is relatively high on these books. We have been meeting our ratio of 4:1, which is our holds to copies ratio that we've been achieving since we passed Measure Y. I'm looking at the pros list on page 61 in the report. As I mentioned, we can return the excess copies quickly when they're no longer popular rather than having to discard them. And we're fulfilling our Measure Y promise to expand the print collections with this program. One of the cons that I would point out is there are fewer books going to our friends groups. Some libraries see it as a con and others don't, depending on how your friends group operates. Typically, a lot of these books would have been handed over to the friends after we removed them from our system. And now, of course, we're returning them to the vendor. So they're not going to the friends in the quantities that they used to. Once we do return books to the vendor, thought you might be interested to know what happens to the books. So the vendor we've been using, Baker & Taylor, they sell them to resellers. They make them available to their own employees to buy, kind of like our own friends sales, where you can go in and have a selection and buy them for $1 or $2. They also donate the books to other libraries that have been impacted by natural disasters or emergencies. And then finally, the books that are no longer usable, they recycle them, which is what we would be doing if they weren't sellable with the friends. One of these books that I picked up this morning actually has a bunch of coffee stains on it. So, things like that we get to just return. We did a staff survey, and I included a few of the comments from the staff as to their perception of how things have been going since we started this a year ago. 83% of them reported being satisfied or very satisfied with the program. And I had included a few quotes here of some things that they said. Patrons are happy being able to walk into a branch and find just what they hope to find and quickly, not having to wait in long hold queues. And as far as where we go from here with the future of the program, we feel like it's been a successful first year. We want to continue doing it. We want to build on it. We did explore a couple of different avenues of expanding it, such as if we wanted to go into children's books or maybe more nonfiction books that have a high turnover, like computer books. And we've decided against that. We feel like it's working really well with just the hottest bestseller, big author titles, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, but staying with adult. And then we also decided we wanted to increase the number of Lucky Day copies. So if you're not familiar, Lucky Day copies are books that are not requestable and they're not renewable. So when we buy lease books, now we're increasing the number of those that we make also Lucky Day copies. So it's just another way of increasing the quantities out there, increasing the inventory, and not only for books that can be put on hold and moved around from branch to branch, but books that it's your lucky day when you walk into the branch and you can find what you want right there. Don't need to wait. So that's my report, and I'm happy to take questions.
Barbara? This is a great report, Jamie, and this is I had answered all the questions that I had. Okay. It was just super detailed. I loved it. I was surprised that there wasn't any cost savings. I appreciate the fact it wasn't the goal. I was surprised at that. I also, to your point about the friends, our friends, when they receive the books, they put them on a table in front of our bookstore and sell everything for $1. So it's a really neat way to give the community the excess books back for a very low price. So that is a little missing thing that, is negative. But I do like the fact that it meets probably, our primary goal of responding very quickly to demand. I think that it's super. So thank you for monitoring this and implementing this project.
Tom?
I don't understand why we're doing this if there isn't a cost saving. and maybe I'm missing thing, is staff time being calculated into the cost? Is this, when you say cost, do you mean just the cost to purchase versus the cost to rent and not staff time that's involved in it?
Correct. It's just the cost of the product.
So have you compared the staff time that's needed for purchase versus the rent?
It's essentially the same. It's the same process to order them. It's the same process when the boxes arrive and they have to be opened and accounted for. There is a little bit of savings with the billing because we pay for the service upfront, one big invoice ahead of time. I think you, as the commission, approved the lease book invoice a meeting or two ago for about $80,000 for the whole year. So we don't get a bunch of invoices throughout the year. That's a little bit of a savings. And then there's a little bit of staff time involved when the books have to be returned to the vendor because we have to get them in our hands, put them in a box, put a UPS call tag on it, and send it back. But I have not tracked the indirect cost to that level, no. But my sense of things is that it's basically a wash.
Well, if the purpose is to have more copies available for hot new books, and we rent them or we buy them at the same cost, why wouldn't buying them be just as effective? So that's I just don't understand why we're changing our system and having another thing out there that we have to deal with.
And I will second that because this is not a win for the Sebastopol Friends of the Library at all. Because from what I gather from attending one of their meetings, they do not understand why we are not in compliance with the buy local policy of this county. And so if there's no cost savings, then why are we not going out to our local book sellers and buying and helping them? Therefore, it helps our local community. Also, what Barbara had said is the fact that the Friends, Sebastopol and Guerneville, that is a huge thing for especially the elder population to have those reduced books. They take pride in helping to spruce them up, take part in the book sales, and then they also feel like they're helping the low income in our communities by having these book sales. So for me, I second what Commissioner Hausner has said. One, if there's no tax savings, I'm not in favor of continuing this. At least I need more information before I would vote to continue this program.
And if I could finish, I mean, maybe there's something out there I don't understand, but it just seems like it's a wash. So why haven't we just bought 400 copies instead of renting 200 and buying 200? You know.
Could I make a couple of observations on this? The first one is that if we were to buy additional copies, we would primarily buy them from our vendor, Baker & Taylor, where we get the highest discounts. So we wouldn't necessarily bring business into the county. And my other thought, and I wasn't here when we designed this, and I'm sure Jamie might be able to respond, but I do know some of our friends groups are having a lot of challenges with space. So that's a consideration. Can they actually handle the volume that we might have for them from this program? But Jamie, I'm sure that was reviewed when you started it a year ago.
Yeah, and each friends group has different space and different needs. Our main concern was our own library shelf space, not the friends space, but being able to quickly get mass quantities of inventory off of our shelves when we needed to, when all of the holds were filled and all the books were being returned and flooding back in. Could we do this without leasing them? Yes, we could do that. We could do that. But again, it wouldn't change the source of where we're purchasing the materials from. It would just change how we're getting things, returned, whether we're discarding them and putting them in our own recycle bins or returning them to a vendor to be resold, or whether returning them over to some of our friends groups that may want them or may not want them.
Call on me, Jamie, will you? No.
You're the chair.
Okay, so you said that 2/3 of the books, and I'm assuming it's higher loyalty because it's the one I'm looking at. Okay, 2/3 of the books you got from Baker Taylor.
We got them all for Baker Taylor. 2/3 of them were leased 1/3 we bought outright.
And 1/3 we
With
bought
this example.
outright.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, okay. Then you sent the 2/3 back when they were no longer needed, and you had 1/3 left. How many is 1/3? I mean, just do that one book. I know it varies with books, but...
Sure, so we bought about 100 copies. About 70 or so of them were leased copies. We've returned about 30 or 40 so far of those leased copies. We still have some leased copies, and of course we still have the ones that we bought outright.
Okay. So you have 30 copies left, basically, I mean, roughly.
Right now.
That we own
yes.
outright.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
And do you anticipate roughly 2 books per staying around per library? Or will you be getting rid of some of those books? Will it go down to 1 in some libraries? In other words, will you be getting rid of some of those we have purchased at some point in time?
Yes, of course, the majority.
So the Friends will benefit to some extent.
Yes, just as they did pre-Measure Y. Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So they're not being deprived entirely of a source for books?
No, definitely not.
Okay. I'm just curious about that.
I have a comment, please.
Yeah, Paul?
I'm always interested in the staff view of these programs, and we're commissioners. We get reports. In my elder status here as a commissioner, I've learned over time that it's really good to listen to the staff. And so I'm interested on what your comment here on page 61, the patron staff feedback. So 83% of staff reported being satisfied or very satisfied with the leased book program. So, and this is, I assume this is opposed to what we had before, which was buying the books. So we're getting, as I understand it from your report, is we're getting our patrons the books faster because of this lease program. And that's really important because we have more books, number one. Because we, you know, if the cost, yeah, we're here, our responsibility as a commission is to make sure that things are as cost effective as possible. But I think taking into the fact that our patrons are happier with this program, they're getting the books faster, they're not on a waiting list as long, that our staff is happier and satisfied with the lease book program, makes it a positive as far as the cost goes. So it seems to me that the staff and this report shows that it's working well. And to go back to the old way would go back to at least it would be unsatisfactory. Our patrons wouldn't get the books faster, and it would be a step backwards. If this costs more, then I would say then we had an issue maybe. But since it's a dead heat here on the cost, I would vote to continue this program. It sounds like so. That's my comment.
Paul, the reason that our users, our library users are happy is because there are more books. Okay, not because they're leased or they're purchased. There are more books that they want to get, so the time is shorter. And what staff has told me, and I've asked if there's something I'm missing here, is that whether they buy or they lease, it's just a question of getting more of them. The cost is the same. So in saying that they're happy with the lease program, I think what probably they're happy with is that there are more books. And so I want to know, and there may be a reason, I'm asking, why is leasing better than buying? If we know we're going to have a seller out there that we need to have 120 copies of that on the shelf the minute it comes in, Why is it better to lease some of those than to buy some of those? And if you can explain that, that would be great.
So it's about inventory management. The main reason is to be able to return those copies, those excessive numbers of copies, when they come back and patrons are done reading that title, to be able to get them out of our buildings, out of our county. They're done. We don't need it anymore. If everyone on the commission wants the Friends to have those excessive number of copies, we can certainly go back to a non-lease book model. That's a decision we can make.
Could you comment on the impact of that? Because when you're talking about inventory management, and I think one thing that I'd like everybody to understand is when you have a book budget that's increased by 65%, you're in a very different world of managing those materials. And we're all about materials management. That's really what we do. So I certainly hear and understand your concerns. I think my concern would be if we return to a model of sending these back to the Friends, what would that take on the staff? Could the Friends accommodate that? Would that slow down the turnaround time? Because we want to make sure we have really fresh materials on the shelves, plenty of copies to fill the requests, but when those requests, move on, we need room for the next one. So the inventory management consideration is key.
And if I could just add to that, and the fact that, it seems like it's a foregone conclusion, and maybe it was at some day, that we just use Baker Taylor because we get a reduced discount. And that I'm not convinced on either. I have no data about why that we would have just reduced savings and that's somehow our goal versus buying local. I understand the staffing and concern about excess piles of books. But I, at some point, would like to know more, have more information about this whole, it's just going to be cheaper if we go with a national versus supporting our local books sellers. Thanks.
Andy?
Obviously, I don't have any information about the specifics, but I'd just like to offer a little different perspective. We just moved. We moved from a 3,000 square foot house in the city that we lived in for 30 years to a 1,500 square foot house in Healdsburg that was already furnished. I've spent the last month trying to get rid of things that I've accumulated over the years because we don't have any space, and maybe not surprisingly have discovered that as much as I have treasured these belongings, other people don't want them. I have to imagine that the library faces a similar issue in terms of you have a limited amount of space. And I know it's counterintuitive to say, gee, we can lease something for the same price that we can buy it, whereas if we buy it, we have it at the end. It sounds like having it at the end may not be such a benefit, and being able to get rid of it easily might be. That's what I'm hearing, Jamie. Is that?
Yes.
Is that what you've found? Yeah. Thank you.
Barbara?
Yeah, I wanted to second that. We're not getting any more shelves. Our buildings are the same size, only a building at a time is being refreshed with shelving. I think sometimes it's even results in less shelf space. So, we don't have any more space. I'm just not clear. I thought this was faster also in terms of getting these books on the shelf. I thought it's faster to do this than to buy them. Is that correct?
We could buy them just as fast.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Deborah?
Just a small thing. I was involved with the Friends of the Library in San Francisco for a long time, and they hated selling library books because no one would buy them, even if they were the freshest book on the shelf, because it was a library book. It had been through lots and lots of hands, and it wasn't as nice as, say, the donation of that same book from the 20 people who donated it to the Friends too. And, at least the Friends in San Francisco had places to put the books. So it's it would be interesting to me, though, if there's a way that you can think about analyzing the cost, and I know you got a million things to do, but if there's a way that you could take another look at the cost, it's not just the cost of the book, what you lease and what you buy, but where are the costs? That might be, and this is, what I wouldn't want us to do is not applaud you for trying a new thing. you've been living in a scarcity model for a long time in this library, and so trying new things to manage the resources is exactly what you should be doing. If this isn't, and if this isn't something that you think is working, then tell us that, because you're the experts. But don't think that we don't think that it's a fabulous idea that you're trying new things. But if there's an additional cost analysis you could do for us, if it wouldn't be a burden, I think that would probably be helpful to the rest of the commission.
And do you mean for those indirect costs, the staff time and so forth?
Yeah, and if there are larger costs that you can think of, like what the staff costs, the time involved, how much time does it take to get rid of the books that you do have to package up? I'm sort of flailing, but yeah.
Okay.
I mean, one another thing too, it's hard to put a price on it, but the relationship with what we have with our community businesses, that we want to help them understand what we do. And I say this in the fact that the Measure Y renewal will be coming up in a hot minute, and we're going to be needing people to help support our branch libraries. So if we're adopting this, and this is going to be our mission, that it's just about cost savings and it's not about supporting local booksellers, that we could buy their book and get them on the shelves just as fast as ordering it from a national group and then leasing them and getting them on the shelf. I just, in my own mind, I don't know what to say to them. And when the next time I go to the Sebastopol Friends of the Library, I don't know what to say to that individual who was pretty adamant in that meeting. And Sarah was there, and she heard it as well. And I think maybe Susan was as well. So these are the struggles that I'm having.
Maybe a topic for a future meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Jamie, very much.
Thank you.
And now we move on to the terms for the Measure Y committee appointees. And we'll leave it to Susan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Fox. And this is just really a follow-up to a discussion that we had at the last meeting where you, Chair Foxen, had suggested that the terms of Measure Y appointees somehow be separated or be different from the terms of their commissioners who appoint them. So the situation is that each of the commissioners appoints a representative to the Measure Y Oversight Committee. And I'm sure our new commissioners are thinking about doing that, and that's a great opportunity for folks to really get to understand a little bit more about Measure Y and the budget. But in researching this proposal, we found in the language of the ordinance for the sales tax, the language reads, each member of the Library Commission shall appoint one member of the Oversight Committee who shall have a term coinciding with the term of the appointing Library Commission member. So staff is not recommending that we attempt to change the language in this ordinance, which is what we would have to do to actually enact your suggestion, Chair Fox. And so we would hope, I think, remember the Measure Y Oversight Committee is just getting started. They're in the process of developing their first report on 17-18 spending, which we hope we'll have here before you in November. I think the Measure Y committee members, in establishing their leadership, and particularly this year, the chair of the committee, the commission member who appointed the chair of the committee decided not to, continue as a commissioner, and so that also the chair of the committee also stepped off. So we had a leadership gap, although the vice chair, I believe, stepped up. But I think the committee, and possibly in standard operating procedures or committee guidelines for the oversight committee, they have to think about their appointing commissioners' terms when they determine who's going to be in a leadership position. Because we don't see any other alternative other than trying to amend this ordinance, which I don't think we'd want to do.
I concur. Once I heard your reasoning, I didn't realize that it was dictated through the ordinance itself. So, but again, maybe for those of you who might be around in 2024, when you begin to redrafting this, maybe you could run it from election to election, which would take that weight off, that immediate weight off a new commissioner. So anyway, something to be considered and thought about later down the road, which probably will be forgotten, but anyway. Okay, any statements?
So a question, I have not seen bios for the people who currently serve on the committee. Are there committee members who would have cycled off with their commissioner who would like to stay on? It would be helpful for those of us who are really new, who might be looking for candidates that are qualified.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
Okay, Andy.
A separate question about this role. Do we need to, I'm the representative of Healdsburg, do I need to appoint somebody from Healdsburg, or can it just be somebody from Sonoma?
That one, I don't know if there's an official clarification.
Sonoma County, right. Sonoma County.
Yeah, also, I think one of the things we need to remember too is you're Healdsburg Library, but like Healdsburg Library City is a very narrow definition of the people who actually use the library.
Sure.
So, because like the whole west side, I believe, is not part of Healdsburg technically, nor is some of the Fitch Mountain area part of Healdsburg technically. But they can come from there, I believe. Is that correct?
Could we clarify, do you have the language, Commissioner McKenzie, do you want to read that language here?
Yeah, it says under process that in choosing a member for the Oversight Committee, a commissioner should first consider appointing an officer of the board of their Friends of the Library, lab, or another civic-minded resident of the commissioner's library branch service area. It says first consider, doesn't say have to, but certainly that's the intent, is the representation.
Sorry, Barbara, where are you reading
I'm sorry, I'm
from?
on page 67, document 10.4.1.
Thank you.
This is kind of the guidelines for the appointment process. That's on page 67, and it's process, and it's 1A.
So it goes back to what I was saying, it's the branch service area that you can draw from. So it doesn't have to be Healdsburg per se. Look at your friends or your lab people because they have experience and knowledge and oftentimes desire.
Okay.
So so it's a good place to start. Okay?
Thank
Does that
you.
help? Does that help the rest of the new people too? Sort of? Okay. Moving on. And thank you for doing that, Susan. It didn't even occur to me.
No problem.
Okay, so we're moving to action items by motion. Approval of the commission meeting schedule for the remaining 2018-19, along with timing and format of agenda packet. So, why don't we start with the schedule first, and then we'll talk about the packets separately, because they basically are two separate items. Okay, in looking at the 2018 schedule, we have 3 more meetings in 2018, and then we have 2019. We have reserved the chamber, these chambers, so that we can start at 6 p.m., which gives us an earlier starting time. We do have to, in November, because of previous commitments, we do have to stay with the 6:30. So do I hear a motion to pass the schedule as it stands at this point in time?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
This is just for 2018.
And 2019. Oh, okay. We'll do 2018 then.
I think you should explain to the new people the 2019 before they approve it, because you've got the budget workshop and stuff.
Oh, okay. I will do that. I'll be happy to. Basically, we now have, before we could not reserve the chambers prior to 6:30. We had to come in at 6:30 because it was already reserved. This time we did it early enough so we could bump it up so it was a little bit earlier, which gives a lot of people were having trouble with the drive home, and it was late, and so they wanted it as early as we could possibly make it, and given the city needs of the chamber, 6 was what worked out for us. Now, when it comes to budget time, we have a special budget workshop day, February 25th in 2019. We spend all day, and the staff last year put together a fabulous series of presentations that really explained the budget and got us through the whole thing better than it had ever been done before. It was really great. But it does take all day. We do feed you lunch, which is nice. And so that's the one day that we have to do that. There are other special meetings, as the example of September 14th might be, that might come along that we need in here, but those we can't plan for until it actually comes up, the issue actually comes up. And so that's basically what we're doing and basically what we're faced with as far as our schedule goes. Does anybody have any questions, or do I need to, yeah? Oh, Barbara?
Oh, my question is, last year we had our budget session the all day at City Council Chambers in Roanoke Park. It doesn't say where we're having this one.
No, because we don't know yet.
We're going to have it here. Jane says we're having it here.
Oh,
thank you.
Too bad.
The issue last year of having it at Roanoke Park was because we could not reserve the council chambers here at that time.
So they are in council chambers. Okay.
Yes. We have reserved all the 2019 times here at the chambers, Santa Rosa.
Okay. Very good. Other questions? Okay. So 2018, 2019 schedules. Do I hear a motion?
Move for adoption.
Move for adoption?
Second.
Second? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
All those opposed? All righty, so we're set with the schedule. Now it's getting the packet to us. The issue with the packet has been, it has been mailed to us. In order to get it a few days before, at least, it has to be mailed like a week and a half or 2 weeks ahead, which means there's a very short period of time between the meeting and when the packet has to be presented for the staff to get all their reports together, to get all the information together. There's also a lag of probably a week and a half, 2 weeks between when the packages are mailed and the meeting actually occurs, in which on occasion incidences have occurred that were important that needed to be included in the packet. And it kind of confused things. So we've been trying to figure out a way that everybody can be satisfied with getting the packet. I personally prefer a printed packet. However, I am willing to print my packet or go down to my library and get a printed copy of it. That has been one of the suggestions, is a digital version and or going to your local library and picking up a printed version. But you couldn't do that until like the Thursday or Friday before. I don't know. We haven't really decided a day before the meeting. That gives you time over the weekend and through Monday to read the packet. They're not that large. So, discussion. I need opinions or ideas. Some people have trouble getting to the library. Some people have trouble with the printing of the packets, so they really want a hard copy. I have trouble reading it, but I'm willing to do it either way. So, discussion is open.
So could I just clarify that we do try to get the packets available Thursday prior to the Monday meeting at the latest? So that's our goal, to get them ready to go Thursday. And the staff preference, I won't say recommendation, is that a digital format is the manner that we use as our manner for access, and that if individuals want to make other recommendations or requests about printing, that exceptions could be made, but we recommend digital delivery of the packet.
Barbara.
Yes, I prefer a paper packet because I read it all over the house and in the backyard, and I make notes all over everything. And I appreciate the information from our IT person, Vicky, that if we do this on an iPad, there is software available, and we can actually make our comments on the iPad on that software. I appreciate that that's an option. I personally just want to have paper and flip it back and forth and bring it to the meeting and look for my notes and all that stuff. You can call me a Neanderthal, but I actually am reasonably competent on electronics. I just prefer paper. I don't have to have it early. I tend to read it the weekend before, so it's fresh in my mind. I'm happy to get the paper copy delivered on Friday or Saturday. I don't really want to have to drive down to my library and get it all printed and do that stuff. These packets are pretty big. There's a lot to them. And so the timing, I've always felt that we get them too early. I understand the cutoff affects staff and the items that need to come before us. I also checked with my husband, who's on a number of boards, and it seems like everybody's got a different way of doing it. I mean, a lot of them have their iPad and they have their electronic versions, but they still get a FedExpress delivery with a packet or even in a booklet. Some of them farm it out to outside agencies. So it's all over the place. It isn't like everybody has moved into all electronic. That's just some comments from me.
May I ask, what is the cost of mailing or delivering a package?
The FedEx standard overnight cost is $24.99 per packet. It's a large envelope.
What about a 2 or 3 day?
So we were asked the question, and I checked off both, only because I figure if I'm traveling or something like that, then I can get it electronically. If I'm not paying attention to what's going on, then I can get it in the mail. But truly, if the staff recommends that we do it electronically, I'm fine with that.
And I'm fine with the digital as well, but just so that I can anticipate. So are we recommending the fact that it all goes out by digital, but then for some of us that like the paper form, are we still thinking the fact that the staff is going to mail it out in regular mail so it doesn't cost an arm and a leg? And when would we receive that by regular mail? Are we talking about at least receiving it by the Friday before the Monday's meeting? That's the part I would like to know, when I could actually expect a hard copy.
So what we did this time, because we talked about this at the last meeting, is that we prepared the packet digitally. We made it available digitally on Wednesday, I think. But I have to say that if you direct us to use general mail as opposed to FedEx, that's going to create the problem of having to send it out like on Monday or Tuesday or something. That's like 7 days before the meeting. So, we want to try to accommodate everybody's needs and desires. But in terms of timeliness of information, I would say that for those of you who wish to get a printed copy, I really would recommend that we spend the FedEx cost to do it. It's $25. I just think in the long run, having the ability to gather this material digitally and send it to you in a more timely fashion, I think the cost of the FedEx sending for the mailing, and I know that Chair Foxen may disagree with me, I think that's worth it, because otherwise, to use the regular mail, we're backed up to like the week before the meeting or something like that.
Just to comment, the U.S. Postal Service does have other than regular mail delivery systems.
So we're happy to check out the U.S. mail overnight if that's what you'd prefer. I mean, I think we need to do the overnight to get it. Okay. If we release it Thursday, get it printed, and then get it to those of you who want it to read on the weekend, we'd have to use some type of overnight mail. We can check and find out what the most inexpensive is.
Okay. So what you will need is something from each of us as to whether we want a paper copy delivered to us, or we will accept it just digitally. Okay. More or less. And
Well,
changing minds.
at the last commission meeting, there were you asked just a poll, and there were 3 hands that went up for a paper copy, so that's who we sent them to this time. I had also done an requested mailing for people's choices about what they would like to, how they'd like to receive the packet, and also how they would like their information used, their address, phone information used. And I only got 4 replies on that. And the newer commissioners are excused because of that. When the mailing went out, they were not here. But the 4 responses I had from people also asked for email and paper copy. So that's 7 copies asked for as hard paper copies.
So it's $175 once a month. Okay, well, that's fine. I just need digital. I'm fine with that. So, okay. So,
Could I just, excuse me just for a second, I wanted to thank Vicki Turbidge for working on figuring out how we can easily, and anybody who wants some help in terms of making notes or highlighting on your version on your iPad or your personal device, Vicki will help you do that. So thanks, Vicki.
well, okay. So I guess we each, do you want to toll now, or do you want to, an email? Okay. Now I request all the commissioners to email Jane and let her know how they would like to receive their copy or copies of the packets each month. And we'll anticipate that it will come Thursday, you said. Thursday, Friday? I mean, the digital one will be up Thursday. Okay. Or Friday at the latest. Okay. And otherwise, it'll be overnighted to you. Okay. So let Jane know, and that's, thank you all for doing this. I just watched for several months the stress on the staff trying to put things together, and then these lapses that would occur. So it was really kind of getting to me. Okay, moving on. Oh, we have to vote on that, don't we? The second half of it. Okay, then let's phrase it as, we'll take a motion as to utilizing both according to the preference of the commissioner, both FedEx overnight and digital, according to the preference of the commissioner. So I want to hear a motion and then a second.
Do we have to vote on this? I don't think we have to vote it. We just do it.
Well, I don't know. It was under the action by motion, so that's why I was voting. But
Approving the commission meeting schedule.
Okay.
So I think
Okay.
if you,
then we're
you
done.
and also I'd rather not specify FedEx because we will check and see what the least cost option is.
Okay, good. Okay. So moving on to approval of library director's salary and unrepresented salary schedule. There are 6 documents involved. And Suzanne, we get to see you again.
Good afternoon again. So I would like to address the documents beginning on page 70. Is it 74? Excuse me, sorry, 73. So as it states in here, we've been without a permanent director for some time, and so we did conduct a recruitment last year, which yielded only a couple of interviewees, and after review by the selection ad hoc selection committee, it was felt that we needed to suspend the search, and then we went on to select an interim director Susan Hildreth, as we've discussed. And part of that selection, as we've talked about, was that the interim director could not be an applicant for that permanent director position when it was reposted. I think that was probably a great decision because Susan brings a wealth of experience, and she's been very active in communicating the director position to all of her colleagues, and so she's also been very active in providing recommendations to the library staff, so that's been very helpful to us.
Suzanne, could I make just one quick comment there? You know, I want to reiterate what Suzanne said, and everyone here knows that it was a requirement of your candidates for the interim director slot not to be interested in the job. But I was talking to somebody, and they said, like, oh, well, you'll get that job, about the job. And I said, no, I'm not applying. I can't apply. So, if you have any conversations with people, among your networks, just make sure they know that your interim director cannot apply. And I've said that to everybody, but I just want to make sure that that doesn't have any impact on our recruitment. Thanks.
So moving on, so we really wanted to re-engage CPS, and that is our contracted recruiter, and I'm taking a more active role in this process to get involved in the salary survey and just the whole recruitment. And so we met with them and conducted another salary survey, revised the recruitment brochure. But one of the things that we did look at was that even though we did a salary survey last year, the salary was 5% over 5% under the median, which is in line with our current compensation philosophy. And so we felt that, recruiting could be, it might be better to, raise the salary to be, to reflect what that median is, and also to look at the benefits. And so schedule, document 11.2.5, which is on starting on page 77, reviews that. So a couple of, the salary we wanted to raise to a top salary grade of, $90.23 an hour. And then we wanted to talk about some of the benefits. To do a library match up to 1% of the deferred compensation. And then that was on page 77. And then no change to some of the other benefits. But also, we currently offer management leave, for 40 hours a year that it rolls over. We wanted to increase that to 80 hours each fiscal year, but to not allow that to roll over. So they would have to use that. Also to offer a vehicle allowance of $400 a month, and review that annually. And then the biggest thing is a relocation allowance. And the reason for that is because the consultant did some review and showed that there's a 54% difference in housing costs, for example, from Sacramento to Sonoma County. So that relocation policy, which is outlined on page 79, is one of the biggest differences. So, Susan, would you want to add some comments?
I would just add that the salary increase to about $192,000 is not a huge increase from where you were, so I think we were in pretty good shape when you started out, but in looking at these comparator counties, I think for us to really be competitive, given the cost of living here, we need to go to that level. And also, in looking at the compensation package, we did compare what our comparator agencies were giving. So, for instance, instance, the car allowance and a bit more generous relocation package than we had before. Those are fairly standard things for executive level. So we think that we have a package that would be competitive, attractive for candidates, but also competitive with similar agencies in the area. There's a ton of information in here for you to review if you'd like. It's interesting that we did look at some JPAs here in Sonoma County, and it was interesting to see how they were paid as well. So this is somewhat competitive with those, although some of our JPAs, the water agency in particular, was being paid at a higher rate and required less education. So I think we're in a competitive position, and we hope that you'll approve this. We're happy to answer any questions, but in fact, this approval will be an action that will help us actually kick off the recruitment. And we also attached here for your information a recruitment schedule, which we can review too if you want. Working the process through the beginning of December, but we can let you know, and we can answer questions about that as well.
Barbara?
Yes, I wanted to repeat something that the recruiter said in a meeting somewhere along the line, and that was that one factor about our recruitment, the pre-Susan coming on board recruitment, was that the acting director, the interim director, was a candidate, and that probably limited some people applying for the job. I don't think that it's all about the salary. As Susan said, we're just a little bit under our policy. I mean, 5.09% or something is just, barely under what the salary survey people said, don't do an adjustment unless it's, 5% or more. So anyway, we're very, very close. I don't have any particular problem with enhancing some of the benefits. I do want to say that we need to put a limit on page 79, where it says reimbursement for round-trip airline travel and lodging for the candidate only for expenses to the interview and one house hunting trip with valid receipts. There's no cap on that, and I think because it's taxpayer money, we want to, I'm sure all of our candidates would be very reasonable people, but I don't think we should be paying business class, first class, and, penthouse at the hotel. Anyway, I just think it needs a cap on that, and that's my primary suggestion. I know we need to move and act on this today, so I don't know how we can modify that today. And the last other thing I'd like to say, back under pension, CalPERS, I'm confused about that. I thought it was either or, and I'm wondering why it says classic and PEPRA, and wonder if we could get clarification on that, please.
It depends on what system the individual is actually in. So if they are already a classic member, then that is the formula. And if they are new to the system, then that would be the formula they come in at. Yes. And any, any flight or anything that the candidate would want to, take would be subject to agreement by the,
well, we could
the
also,
CFO.
We can set an amount, and
yes.
we have our CFO here. So, usually travel like that would be, each of the trips would be at least $1,500. So it should be at least $3,000. I don't want to go overboard and say, I'd say we have to set a max, and I'm concerned 3,000 might be a little low, but what do you think? Do you have a recommendation, Ken, for 2 trips?
It depends on where the individual is coming from.
Yeah.
If they're coming from LA, it's going to be different than if they're coming from New York.
But it's also a not to exceed. So we're going to reimburse based on their, receipts not to exceed. So possibly $3,500. Is that reasonable?
Well, then
okay
I move, if we're
Commissioner
going to
McKenzie?
cap that at $3,500, then I move with that addition to accept the proposal and the revised 2018 unrepresented salary schedules for the unrepresented positions.
I second.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Could you
Thank
please
you.
use your microphone?
Could I just remind everybody on page 85 that we do have an anticipated schedule. This certainly is subject to change, but what I wanted to point out was that on November 5th, which is a commission meeting day, the selection committee, the CPS would have a recommendation in terms of a short list of candidates. They're going to do an initial review of candidates on October 26th, so they'd come back early November with a short list of candidates. We would also anticipate that the ad hoc selection committee would interview the week of November 12th. We don't have any specific dates, but if those who are currently on the ad hoc selection committee could hold early afternoon of November 5th and some days early in the week of November 12th. And also, we're looking at December 3rd, which is a commission meeting day, to try to orchestrate in the afternoon, maybe at the Central Library, but we're trying to orchestrate an opportunity for the full commission to meet final candidates. We hope we'd have 2 or 3, so you could have interviews in the afternoon preceding the commission meeting. So we'll get back to you with all that information, but we're trying to synchronize some of your commission meetings with these recruitment activities.
Excuse me.
And thank you for referring us to that schedule. On there, it does say recruitment brochure distributed, and I know at our last meeting that there was several suggestions about how to tweak that language. If it's been tweaked, is it possible that whatever is intended to be sent out to us, just so that we'll have it and we can start talking about it?
We have done modifying, and we had shared it with the ad hoc selection committee, but I will today or later today or first thing tomorrow, I'll share it with everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're moving on to the purpose and frequency.
Could you please use your microphone?
Oh, sorry. Okay, we're completed with that one, and we're moving on to 11.3, which is purpose and frequency of commission notes. Do you want to start, Susan, or do you want me to?
Do you want to start? This is, well, I'm sorry. Why don't you give us a little bit of a start, okay. Chair Foxen, and then I'm also going to ask Sarah, since she's still here, would you mind coming to the microphone, Sarah? Because Sarah Vantries and I had a good discussion with Commissioner Foxen and Commissioner Heavenridge about the commission notes.
This came up in one of the advocacy committee meetings, and it was, what is the purpose of the commission notes, and what do we want to actually say in them? Up to this point in time, they've been kind of nice, fun, light notes, often important things in it, but just on the light side. It comes out mostly as kind of a Sonoma County Library newsletter form, and we were talking, and what we envisioned or what we thought was oftentimes the council people, oh yes, it's from the library, click, it's gone, because it's not any information that's pertinent to an importance to me or to my city or what have you. So we began talking about changing the foundation, the concept for what the notes should actually present, and then possibly sending them out quarterly rather than every month. So that's kind of where the conversation started. I am inclined to agree, because I happen to have somebody comment since that discussion that, oh yeah, I get those things, I just click them away. And I thought, okay, well, this is a valid discussion then. We need to put something that's of importance to them, to our specific council person entities. So with that, Susan and...
So we can just echo the discussion that we had with you, and we're, you know, I think as you said, Chair Foxen, the information is sometimes duplicated, sometimes a little out of date. We have a monthly newsletter that we send. We have things all over the Facebook, so it isn't necessarily providing the function or fulfilling the function we wanted to provide. And I think the other issue we talked about in the advocacy meeting was that we need to try to address our agencies and partners as kind of a government to government or agency to agency kind of an approach, to try to think about what content might engage a city council member or a city manager or someone on the board of supervisors. So we don't necessarily want to be duplicative. I honestly don't I've been trying to think about what is the most engaging or interesting content. I mean, some of those folks might want to read about what we're doing with the OPEB, which is not necessarily something that the public would want to read about. And I also have to comment that we are going to have a community relations manager here, and I'd really like to get that person's point of view on this. But we did want to clarify that we weren't going to be sending it out in its current format, and we really wanted to do a revision and try to get something out before the end of the year. And Sarah, you probably had some thoughts too after that discussion.
Yeah, we also talked about, and this was separate, but the advocacy committee would really like to be able to provide advocacy documents that all of you could use, talking points when you're out and about, so you can talk to community members or other elected officials about the impact of the library in your community. So one thought that I had would be to craft this commission notes or this document in sort of a similar way. So it could be something whether or not other people are clicking it to their discard immediately, like Commissioner Foxen said, but it's something that you have or the library advisory board members have that they can take and talk about in person at the city council meetings when they're meeting with our elected representatives. So kind of combining that as well, that might reduce the total amount of time that we're spending on it, but give you something that you can really use to make the case and tell the story of the library in your community.
Barbara?
I totally 100% support this. I think we need to have a much closer relationship, understanding communication with our appointing jurisdictions. And this has always been a little bit confusing, I think, they appoint us, but then, what are we doing? And so I think this level of communication is critical. Appreciate the change in it. I also think that having the advocacy documents, which is, I guess, kind of separate a little bit, but, the facts and figures, totally important. We've never had those. That also gives us something to go down when we go down to our appointing bodies and give updates, which we haven't clarified how frequently those should be, but that's part of this ongoing policy discussion that we need to have. So anyway, 100% support this, and I would actually be happy to make a motion that we adopt this change.
And I would happily second, and also thank you for the thoughts, the talking points, and also the figures. I didn't know the figures either of the people who walked through my library until I sat down with the director, and it was like mind-blowing about the number of people. So it's like to have the talking points and the figures to be able to go to the council meetings, which they do expect us to come frequently, to have them on a periodic basis would be lovely. So I second the motion of Commissioner McKenzie.
Yeah, I like the idea too, because it gives they have an opportunity to read it, to view it visually, and then they can hear the same things from us repeated. And it takes 2 or 3 times to get things through people's heads. So I like the idea of that double whammy with it, so the commissioners can use those as talking points, and I think that's a good idea.
I think you got a motion on the floor here.
Motion on the floor. All in favor?
Okay, so it's been motioned and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? All righty, passed. We're moving on. Okay, now the resolution to revise the Conflict of Interest Code.
So before you is a new resolution to adopt an amended conflict of interest code. The conflict of interest code of the Sonoma County Library has to be reviewed every 2 years. It was last reviewed in December of 2016. This code has been reviewed by our general counsel, Ann Keck, and she is incorporating in our code a standard conflict of interest code so that when changes occur at the standard code level, they'll be immediately included in our conflict of interest code. And also, if you want to discuss in further detail, we've changed some of the individuals who are reporting and the names of some of the titles. That's not specifically significant, but I wanted to bring that to your attention, and I'm sure that's on a page here very soon. And the other thing I wanted to point out is that when you pass this, hopefully you'll pass this resolution, and then we provide our conflict of interest to the Sonoma County Board of Supervisors for their approval as the reviewing body under the Fair Political Practices Act. So if you, where are those? If you, we'd be happy to answer any questions. If you have questions on the specific changes of job positions or anyone who's included on that, I'd be happy to try to answer those.
Anybody have any questions? Okay. I was confused when I read this, and I'm even more confused now. Are we approving the resolution that is dated 9/17/18?
Yes.
Okay. And we don't have to worry about the 8/6/18. Okay. So all those in favor?
I move for adoption of the resolution adopting amended conflict of interest code of the Sonoma County Library.
Second.
All righty. Since it has the commission voting down here, do we need to go individually, or can we just take
I think you can just do it as a whole.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And all those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. So it was unanimous with Jason Merrick absent. Okay. Now, any items to include in commission notes? Okay.
We're going to eliminate that item based on today's discussion, but I think, feedback about what we might want to have in this new version of the commission notes, just, share it with me, with Sarah, with anybody as we start to reshape that document.
Okay, could we have Jane send out a reminder then to do that? A reminder to contact Susan, and I will email you and tell you. Reminding or telling Susan, giving Susan any feedback about specifics they might want in these notes. Okay. With that, we move back to the last page. Okay. The next meeting is Monday, October 1st at 6 p.m.
Excuse me, do you want agenda items for future meetings?
That's where she is, I think. Was that there? Oh, 14. I thought you were doing that. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, I was going to, okay. Okay, any agenda items for future commission meetings?
Yes, I would like an update on where we are with the Roseland branch. I understand that the money was set aside or approved by the county, and I understand from the director's report that there's been a number of meetings and engagement around that with the mindset of making sure that we all are at the same level as far as access to our library services, regardless of where you live in the county. I am worried that February is coming around the corner, and I want some sort of update by the next meeting of what are we looking at as far as lease spaces, and what is the concrete plan moving forward, because in my mind, again, February is just going to be around the corner. So thank you.
Okay. Got that? Okay.
Yeah, we got that. In fact, we've looked at some properties, and we'll update you at the next meeting.
Okay. Anything else anybody want on the agenda at the next meetings?
Just to clarify, hopefully at the next meeting, we will also have the approval for the architect for the Petaluma refresh. We're working on that, and hopefully it'll be ready to go for you October 1st.
Okay. Anything else? All righty. Next meeting is going to be October 1st. Because of the closeness to this meeting, we have told the staff that they didn't have to do staff reports. And we're going to make it somewhat of a workshop meeting, but I understand also there are some items coming up that we will need to address. So as soon as I find out a list of those and we have a time frame, we will create a workshop session so we can begin to get to know each other and get these committees moving, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, anything else?
Could I just make a comment? They're new people. There's some changes in the schedule. There's a bunch of stuff. The first year I was on the commission, I had my 50th high school reunion. My mom died, and I got really sick, and I missed 3 meetings. And I got a letter. A letter went to my appointing city council saying, Barbara's missed 3 meetings. And I felt very chastised for it. And, but anyway, that is our existing policy about missing meetings. And I'm just wondering if we want to, I don't know, talk about it, or, you know, what people's perceptions about it are. And, you know, all these meetings are important. Everything's important. This next meeting, even though it's not going to have a lot of agenda items on it, is very important in terms of, I think, training and information and communication. So anyway, I'm just putting it out there on the table for comment.
Well, my understanding is you didn't get a letter until after 3 times. Is that right? That's what I said. Okay.
My mom died. I had my reunion and I got sick.
Oh, it was 3 different meetings. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. So what did you want?
I don't know. I just wanted to bring this up as a discussion item about the importance of attendance of meetings and whether we're going to enforce that policy. I don't know that anything's happened since then. And again, there's changes that are difficult. People come on the commission and they think, you know, it's 1 meeting a month at such and such a time. And then there's all these other things that happen, and there's the full day budget, and, you know, there's a lot of stuff. So anyway, I just wanted to bring it forward and for comment. You know,
Well, it might be a good discussion for part of the working meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that might be. So think about it, because it is more than just 1 meeting a month for a couple of hours. I mean, it's some work. And it's some thought that goes on between these meetings. It's the subcommittee meetings, and they're all really vital to the library and vital to creating our image out there in the world. So I'm hoping that everybody can adjust enough to survive it. Anyway, okay. Anything else?
Are we doing commission items, commission note items? At the end of each commission, we talk about what we'd like to put in the commission notes, isn't that correct? Yeah.
I thought we had done that. Okay, sorry.
Did we already do that? Yeah. Oh, I went to the facility here. I must have missed that. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm going to get confused. Okay, so our next meeting is October 1st, and as I said, it's going to be, we're not going to have staff report. We're going to let them off the hook for 6 weeks, so they have a bit of a breather. Anyway, okay, we'll see you then, Monday, 6 p.m., and with that, I adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.